3. All right, so welcome back from the break, everybody. We were just having a quick talk about one of our ed specialists, policy analysts at the state, Lauren Dressen. I think, can you see the screen? Everyone's got the, all right, Lauren is our secondary CTE data analyst. She wanted to join us and is booked for these events time frame wise, but she made a wonderful 10-minute YouTube conversation video that is in the link here. If you have time to listen to it later, Lauren's going to sit with me and we're going to make a sort of a lesson plan for adults and a lesson plan for kids around her conversation. The quick and short story is that as a 5th and 6th grader, she was, and I'm going to use the word, traumatized in her math and science classes, and led to believe that she could not achieve in those areas in her life, in her studies in middle school and high school. And yet today, after encountering educators who supported her and helped her through that, she is the head of CTE data analyzation at the state level. Like, she does nothing but math all day long and nothing but that scientific inquiry into the data that we work with at the state level. Absolutely brilliant. Very, very motivated and passionate about this work. So we'll offer that as maybe a conversation starter that could occur with some staff to think about the impact of our words and actions with young kids and how that affects their personal outlook and how they set themselves up for outcomes as they're moving forward. So that is there for your reference. And we're going to go into Regina talking. Welcome. Good morning, Regina, from High Desert.
Morning.
About what the student experience is going to be. And our goal here is, in this pilot project, kind of having an organic and supportive process of developing these career exploration opportunities, using the YouScience platform and data to begin conversations with our students and our parents, amongst the educators, counselors, coaches, administrators in the building, and with our community, our churches, our businesses, and our community organizations. Like, how can we create opportunity for kids? And so Regina is going to kickstart the next half an hour or so of conversation around that subject. So it is all yours.
Thanks, Jim. Good morning, everybody. I'm at the High Desert ESD. I'm working with Brooke. I'm a CT instructional specialist and also work with a math and real life grant currently. So I want to upfront load this here. These are points that came out when we were first presented with YouScience, and this is supposed to be from now on kind of a more organic conversation about what your thoughts about equity and access is. We have Carla and Brooke also presenting on this and talking about this. So here are some questions that came to our mind while we were talking to Jim, to Beth, and as a group. And there can be additions to this or no additions. So please look at these quick. It's not that we have the answers for it, but what are your thoughts around these topics we bulleted here? And there are probably other bullets. This is really more a discussion point from now on. We just would like to hear from you as well. How are we using strength-based versus deficit-based language? Or how could that happen with the YouScience conversation as kids see the results? Any insights? So please open the mic here or your chat, or type in the chat and just share. We just would love to hear from you here.
One of the things that I think about with that is that, especially in the students I have currently, as much as I'm generally strength-based, that's not what they're hearing at home, and that's not what they're hearing other places. And for me, that is one of the kind of concerns I have, is how do we give some of these kids kind of a wraparound experience more? And because I also know, as I've kind of talked about it, that parents are somewhat of a hindrance, because if parents didn't have a great experience growing up or thinking this through, they tend to try to pass that on to kids sometimes. So that's one of the things I'm concerned with going forward, is just how do we make up for the deficit that they're experiencing in other places.
Thank you, Ben. That's a very good point. Does anybody else want to follow up on that? Has same experiences or thoughts around this?
Regina, I wanted to share. Oh, I'm sorry if I stepped on somebody's toes.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It's been some years since I've been out of, direct instruction with students, but even thinking about my own kids and thinking about the messaging at school, right, is this student isn't excelling in math, so they need some additional supports because they are deficit. So similar to what Ben was saying is that we almost always work on a deficit-based language with our students and providing additional supports. And I wonder what the, thinking, and reflecting on Lauren's story, which I know a bit about, I wonder what the conversation would look like if we were to say, for example, hey, Regina, you are extremely strong in this area. We are going to provide some additional supports here, but we love that you are an expert in this area and we want to use those skills to help influence, your peers. Just a different way with that conversation and the long-term effects that more positive approach might have on our students. So I just wanted to kind of share that thought I was having this morning.
Thank you, Brooke. There, anybody else? Bob, did you want to say something?
I teach I teach at Jervis. Well, I'm a principal at Jervis Middle School now, but I've been in the Jervis district for over 20 years, and we're about 70% Hispanic families, and trying to overcome some of the family biases, I guess, against, well, why do they need to go to college? Why do they can't they just come work with us in the landscaping business or in the fields? And we had a very, through a lot of discussion, we had a parent who was very, didn't understand why his daughter should go to college. And she actually is going to wind up in medical school. And he didn't see the value of that, and trying to explain to them and talk with them about why it was a good idea for his daughter to go to college and look at that extra, the next step, because he thought, well, she can just come work in the fields with us. And that was, it's trying to get over some of the cultural stereotypes that they have. Why can't they just come work hard like we do? And it is a struggle sometimes. And this was a very bright kid. She knew what she wanted to do, but it was and she was afraid. She says, I don't think I can go to college because I don't think my dad will let me. And had to do a lot of discussions. And we constantly have those discussions with all of our communities that, high school is good, but it's that next step. It's not always college. And that's the other one, is trying to break down not everything is college after high school. There are training programs, there are certification programs. And I'm so excited about bringing this information to our middle school students and getting them thinking about what they're going to do for middle schoolers, for 8th graders in 5 years when they graduate, what the next step is, getting them thinking beyond the here and now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Bob, for sharing. Definitely, these are all topics. And, if you look at this, what I loved about it was this equalizer, that when I hear this over and over, when you see the results and see the equalizer around this, but amongst also underserved populations, and how it spreads out the percentile going in certain areas. However, I still wonder, for me, I think a big part is also the communication. How do you communicate this to students? Along the line, what Brooke said, or even Lauren Lessel experience with mathematics, like if I want to go to bullet 2 quick, implicit biases. So say on the test comes out a girl, I've used now female again, because there's still this issue around, especially going into computer science or engineering and these higher earning professions, that the talent might have not lie in the mathematics. So what do we do about this? Does it feed into our stereotypes? And also with culture, like you mentioned, Bob, from other cultures, people coming from other cultures. How do we lead these conversations? I think we have to be really mindful about this. Any thoughts about around this? And Brian, I saw your, I will get to that too. Brian, in a second. Any thoughts around that? About these conversations?
Can I share something? This is Lisa.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was just thinking, like, as you were saying that, because I do agree, like, sometimes at my school that I taught at, it's primarily Hispanic, Latino background. And yeah, it was almost like a feeling like, why do they need to go to college? And that it's a cultural thing. Families can sometimes be very important, but then career in college sometimes gets put aside. And I know that's very general, but I almost think like having students coming from like freshmen students coming from college and talking to the kids, like particularly from like low SES or Hispanic or the Black community, to come in and talk to the kids, because I don't know if they're going to hear it from the adults talking, the teachers talking. They all know we believe in them, but seeing their someone like them that has gone through the things, and they come and share their experience, like, you can do this, you can go to college, you can do what you want, you can get the career you want, and just kind of motivating them, and maybe like certain clubs to join in and just showing them that. I don't know. I was just thinking that when you were talking about that.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah. No, and it's true what you're saying. We had students when I worked prior in Lane County, and we had students from smaller school districts. They've never been to Eugene and never have been foot on a community college. They were literally scared to get off the bus. They heard certain stories and they said, nobody in my family went to college, nobody knew. And it's also navigating the system. I'm an immigrant to this country, and I had to navigate the system, and it's not easy always. So yeah, absolutely. Brian, I want to get to your bullet here. You said bullet 4 is important to me about who have had success with these students. Would you like to talk about this?
I guess I'm just wondering what success that other people have had with getting, the ELL students and students with disability to have success with this test. I'd say test and the program itself, of what else have other people done, whether it's hearing again from Amy or just hearing from other people that have done this, of what success they've had.
Yeah, I think for us it's all new, so we don't really know. Amy, do you have any insight? Is Amy still on the phone here?
Amy's out, but I can tell you she is helping us with this conversation, Brian. Georgia has the most prolific work across the state in terms of population. And we did just receive contact to a lot of their community leaders that are working and have worked on this over the course of the last 5 to 7 years. So that is on our list of questions with them, because that is a completely new subject matter for us here. We'll get that back to the coordinators and also put resources that we gather from them into the resource folders. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. That was a really good question. What came out in other conversations, and also when I saw it, since English is my second language and when I took the test, reading can be difficult sometimes. I mean, I have a degree here from America, but still some words I stumble over regardless, especially under test situation. I get stressed out. And seeing some of the words, even I'm supposed to know them, but I get stressed, as I said, and my brain just gets in this black box. So these are things with ELL students, if they run into a words, they might be familiar and unfamiliar. So it's really one of those things. We have to be mindful about that. And this test at this point is not available in a second language, but my understanding is they're working on it. And then also the speed, and again, with ELL or students with disability, that can be a hindering point. And again, you get stressed out, nervous, and enter this, your brain and your body enters this spot where you just get scared and you freeze. So these are all issues I think we have to be mindful about, and maybe I think not maybe, we should be transparent about this to our students and say, take breaks. As Amy said, you can take breaks between the tests. You don't have to finish the test in one sitting. But addressing this from the up front with the students, I think, is important. So we mark this as limitations, but I really appreciate, Brian, that you brought that out. So any other, I want to also give room for the next conversations. There's some other rich conversations, other slides coming up. So I want to give space to Carla and to Brooke as well, where we keep on going with this conversation. I think, is there anything else right now? Try to go look at the chat. If there are any other questions. Did you see anything else, Jim, in the chat right now we should address? I don't want to miss anybody.
No, just a lot of people contributing, that a lot of agreement around this area, how to create that as an equitable line as well. There are instructions in Spanish, that is correct. The test itself, the exam itself, doesn't have the instructions posted on the screen in a second language. They are working on it. We've made that a concern as well. They're certainly getting that from other states. There was a conversation in the last gathering about if an educator or if anybody got ahead of the curve in prep time, could those instructions be recorded so that students would have access to them? And then if that's in the folder of shared resources, you would have recordings available for students to listen to in a primary language, and or to be able to listen again and again as needed to get to a comfort spot. So
something else that came up last time as well was, you know, if say the kids get the results and they have a certain aptitude, it's always as they move into high school to point out, test yourself. Don't just only go where your talent might lie on this test. Test yourself in another area. You might gain some interest, and then you like it, even if your aptitude might not show this, but you might like whatever it is, what the aptitude is. So so kids should not limit themselves by what their aptitude set is saying, the aptitude test. And Brooke said too, and that's a very good point, and that came up last time as well. It's, I think emphasizing this is not a test to students, that is a very important test. This is a point in time snapshot of a student's aptitudes and interests. Exactly. And we had the conversations around testing fatigueness, so being upfront, and I think Jim and Beth are working around a letter to the parents on that will be distributed, and Jim will talk about this later. So that these are all the things we have to keep in mind. But I know Carla will touch on some of those topics, and Brooke too, so I want to pass it along. Thank you.
Thanks, Regina. That was great. And there's a lot of what you're talking about that does. It kind of crosses over to, I think, my topics and Brooke's topics too. So we're going to talk more about this. Can we just get a show of hands really quick? How many of you, whether you're a coordinator for the grant or whether you're working in the school and going to be helping to deliver this assessment, how many of you have taken the test yourself, the assessment, the brain game, whatever you want to call it?
And if you're not screen on, you can use the little hand raise.
So leave your hand up, because I'm going to scroll through because I can't see you all at once here. Leave your hand up if you've taken it for just a minute here. Okay, if you have not taken it, I would highly encourage you to do that as soon as you can. I think for those of you that have taken it, and we're going to talk more about your experience with that in just a moment here, there is something to be said about what you experience yourself prepping to take this assessment, while you take it, waiting for your results, your own reactions once you get your results. And if you haven't done that yourself, I highly encourage you to do that as soon as you can. And if you need access to do that, the coordinators can help get that for you from Amy. So, and it does take about an hour and 10 minutes or so to finish the assessment at the middle school level. You don't have to do it all at once. You can do it in sections. I highly recommend doing it in sections. I'll tell you from my own experience, I did it all at once and I was over it by the end of it. And so I think I probably skimped on my interest part because I just started pushing buttons. We don't want our students to do that. So take it in sections so that you can give it your all. Anyways, okay, if you've taken the test, let's go on to the next slide. If you have taken the test, what was your reaction during the assessment prior to receiving your results? And I would love to hear from you. I mean, you're welcome to put things in the chat if you've got laryngitis or something, but I would really honestly love to hear your reactions to the test. Let's talk about this.
I felt like I got smarter as I kept taking each test segment. I just felt good about that. Not so smart at the beginning.
What other reactions? Waiting for your results, taking the test.
I think I never can get over this test anxiety issue. I don't know why, although it's just a snapshot. It's not, nothing is at stake for me, but it was kind of this, like I said, the speed that stresses me out every time.
I think that for me, even though I had seen about it before, it was just the actual doing it, that it was still very interesting to me of actually doing something instead of just answering a question. So I thought that was good, but it definitely surprised me how different that is than what we're used to seeing and what our students are used to seeing.
Anybody else? Who else took it? Brooke took it. Beth took it. I want to hear from you too.
I could talk. This is Beth. So I thought it was fun and I liked the challenge, but because I have traumatic brain injuries, I have multiple ones. I just found it difficult with the timing and like the speed of being able to respond. So I think about that for students who maybe have some sort of disability or maybe that are language learners, if they are trying to interpret the information in the way that makes sense for their brain and then be able to then respond to the questions that this would also be challenging for them.
And then Brooke's comment here in the chat, didn't want to mess up, kept thinking about the CIS took in high school and how it felt pointless at the end. I think go ahead. You want to talk more about that?
I can speak to that. So when I was in high school, I wanted to work with animals, wanted to do something in veterinary medicine. And so I felt like when I got partway through that CIS, I was trying to manipulate the answers so that I'd get the results that I wanted at the end. So I could just show people like, ha, I can do it. And not so much in YouScience, there's no gaming. So I just kept thinking like, if I can find the right answer, it's going to tell me that I should be doing exactly what I'm doing right now. So I guess it was just a comparison. I haven't done a lot of career interest surveys or aptitudes. So it was just kind of that comparison to a really long time ago. And my feeling that I had sitting in that classroom, just like, let me get this over with. It's pointless. It's dumb. There's nothing it's going to tell me that I don't already know.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm going to age myself because when I took CIS in high school, I had to use the ballot style punch hole. All right, Bob, thank you. Sorry, Carla, go ahead.
Well, I think I can relate to that too with what Brooke was saying. And with those personality tests or interest tests, you can fake it. You can say, I mean, you can plan ahead and go, okay, if I deliberately answer my questions this way and then look to see what the results show. But because the aptitude portion of this is truly assessing how you think and the way your brain works, it's a completely different process. And so I think it's very important how we communicate to our students ahead of time that you can't mess this up. This isn't about getting it right. This isn't about scoring well. This isn't about you're wrong if it shows that you've got strengths in one area but not another. It's truly an assessment of showing them, hey, this is how you're wired. This is how you work well. And according to your aptitude, whether you have an interest in it or not, these areas, you are naturally going to excel in these areas. And so I think how we communicate that is going to be really important. Someone mentioned earlier, it might have been Ben earlier, asking, what questions are available to help our students prepare for this. And I think we've been talking about that as we've been planning for this. And so we're going to have some tools for you in addition to whatever's available through YouScience for you to have some questions, some conversations that you can have with your students ahead of time to help get them in the right mindset, hopefully to alleviate that stress and just give them the time and space to walk through this process. Once you've got your results, those of you that took the test, what was your reaction? Did you have a different feeling about yourself after you got results? Were there surprises? Did it tell you what you already knew?
I'll kick it off. I took the high school version. They gave you 12 career recommendations, and I had paychecks in 9 of the 12 after 32 years of employment. So I very luckily lined up with my aptitudes.
Anybody else? Anybody have an opposite experience with their results? I did. I was shocked when I saw my results. And I joke about this. I'm like, oh my word, I've missed my calling. It says I should have been a construction worker or an engineer or I can't even remember the other area, an agriculture person. I have almost zero interest in any of those fields. I wonder, had I taken, I don't like pigs. I don't even love my dog. I mean, that's not true. I kind of love my dog. We have a dog because my daughter loves animals. Not too late, huh? Well, I wonder what would have happened and what would have gone to explore career and education wise had I taken this test in middle school or high school. I think as a middle school and high school person myself, I've always had lots of interests, except for construction, engineering, and agriculture. I'm kidding. I just wonder what that would have looked like. And I did grow up knowing that I could go do anything I wanted to do in life. So I grew up with a certain level of confidence, knowing that I could go conquer the world in whatever area I wanted to. And not every family has that. And so I think that also ties into what conversations are we having with those students who are growing up in a home that if there's that, you know, they're being told, well, why don't you just come work on the farm? Or you're a girl, you should do this. You're a boy, you should do this. How are we having those conversations? I think by finding out where they sit, what their own thought process is beforehand, and then don't be judgmental. Maybe don't comment. Maybe don't build them up one way or the other before they've taken the test. Let them take the test. Have the conversation with them about, okay, what are your own reactions to this?
So I had a question here. What is if an aptitude arises during that middle school test and the kids go into high school and there is no program for them to go into? So, I mean, not all schools are really equipped with all the CT programs. I mean, schools are set up in a certain way. They have to take math, they have to take science, they have to take the English. There is no way around it to get their graduation requirements met. So what if they are, like Carla said, I have aptitude for construction, but there is no construction CT program.
I would love to share with you that that conversation came up as a part of this pilot project. That conversation came up and has come back to the state level, and that question is being brought up. Now, what do we do in that situation? So thank you, Regina, for bringing that up. I'll make a note of it again, that it's a point of concern that when students do find that they have an aptitude for something and that may result in an interest in it, where do they get to go, and or where they are, is there a way to have that opportunity in some way, shape, or form?
I just find it also a tough conversation then, because kids have to have 3 math credits. They have to have the amount of science credits. They have to have a certain amount. We cannot omit that part. So that's just, I just thought about that. So
one of the things too, kind of along that, is there any resources around being able to kind of introduce to students this idea that it could be vocational, but it could be avocational too, in terms of that not everything necessarily has to tie to a job? Or is the point of this to really be explicitly tied to vocations and jobs?
I guess I've been sitting here listening, and because I have over the last several decades been a real proponent of CIS, because there really hasn't been any other vehicle that we've used to try to do, you know, career guidance or support. And yet I recognize, I think the strength of this is that aptitude piece, but interests are too. It's about the whole person. Kids are trying to figure out, starting in middle school, actually about 5th grade, who am I? Are there other ways of having a family than the family I'm in? They're comparing with friends, all that type of stuff. They're trying to sort out, you know, not only who am I, but then maybe who am I becoming, or what could I potentially become? And so, you know, I've been trying to piece together the pressures on schools. We talked about that need to drive to credit, certain credits we have to get, like that's the checkbox for competency. And it seems to me that alongside that, there's this thread of how do we have the tools that are, I guess, efficient because of the amount of time we have, that help us make sure we don't just one size fits all, but kids really can kind of ebb and flow with as they're developing, because they don't all develop at the same time. So when you do something with 7th graders, you have some very immature 7th graders, and you have some other kids who are really mature in their thinking. And I've just been struggling with the investments I know our district and others have made in CIS. What's the enhancement that comes with YouScience? I hadn't taken this assessment. What I did is I went back and I went through all the CIS stuff to really see what was there and what the gaps were. And I acted like I was a student and all that. It was fascinating. I could see, boy, there are some gaps in what's going on here. But I also took the national career readiness assessments, that certification piece. And I'm just seeing that it's like this is we have a lump of coal and with pressure on it, we're trying to find the unique diamond in every kid, and there's different facets in the way it gets cut. And if it gets cut certain ways, the advantages for that student, or if they're in certain environments are greater, and then there are other things where it feels like we've let them down. And in reality, public schools aren't there after kids leave. So what the struggle is to have the experiences along the way as we're teaching the academics, and they have the soft skills, they have the ability to transfer skills. No, we can't provide every program in our school district, but are there certain experiences that actually teach you transferable skills? And how does that relate to your, having your aptitudes aligned with your interests is wonderful. I find if you just reflect on life of people, some people you can see where that happened earlier, some people later, people have second careers. The chasing the salary piece is not necessarily the only thing. There's the job satisfaction. When we look at the high ticket jobs, what's the longevity of people in those? Actually, what happens to them? So that's the part I'm wrestling, because I really like this aptitude component to, this in terms of what really maybe a kid, it's a little deeper. It's easier to ask a kid a question what their interests are. They're going to give you something. But if they haven't been reflective, or there hasn't been a way to tease out some of those things that are under the surface, that are rooted under the ground like a tree with its roots, we don't get to the root level, which is where the aptitude piece is. And we understand how strong that root structure is, or where they have the potential to grow that taproot further. Then the storm comes along, they blow over, and then we got to rebuild them. Right? They got to rebuild themselves, I should say, or they don't. So that's the piece. As I'm hearing this conversation, I'm trying to figure out how to integrate all that with the requirements around career-related standards and the amount of time we devote to all that. And then, but is it just a checklist of things that we want to say we did, so we didn't mess this kid up because we gave him a chance to touch everything once a little bit? Other than that, I don't have an opinion.
Thank you, Phil. I want to go back to a couple of comments in the chat here. I'm going to start with Beth, wondering if there's opportunities, experiences out of school, if no POS, that we can expose students to. Around the state, I know there's different groups around the state here that are going to be using different opportunities for career exploration. In Southern Oregon, we're going to be intentionally utilizing Oregon Connections to help provide those career awareness and exploration opportunities. And we're going to, as our students in Southern Oregon take their assessment, we're going to be meeting with those schools that are doing this directly after they receive the results. And we're going to intentionally sit down and plan, how do we want to use Oregon Connections? Do we want to take a high level? What are the averages? Where are the high levels that we see? What categories? And we're going to do a career panel, and we're going to book people for some intentional career chat, tours, opportunities, and we're going to pull from our local region for that. And if there's not something available in the local region, we're going to expand and go outside. But that's one way that you might do that. Amy, can you expand upon your comment?
Yeah, I like that we're talking about, obviously this is kind of the jobs part is important, because it is kind of that, college and career readiness aspect of all of these, but listening to, I haven't taken this yet, but listening to Carla talk about how, none of the things were, parts of the things that you had done, just makes me think about, like, just because there's an aptitude for that sort of thing, I feel like there can be a way to like really push, like, okay, but these are just your strengths, like these skills are your strengths, and you can leverage those strengths in a variety of fields, in mathematics, in science, in your language arts, which you need to have 4 years of credit in that, and really be thinking about, okay, this is my aptitude, these are the things that I have natural strengths in. How do I use them as leverage points to get into all of the other areas to be a fully well-rounded person? And it doesn't necessarily have to be about, does the high school have a job for me just to go back to Carla's example, to be a pig farmer. You know, we don't have to necessarily create programs that are super specific. You know, it's just like, these are the skills. And now we, you know, because in the workplace, you know, I think about like my husband's an architect, and I've, you know, really gotten a lot of architecture experience this last year working side by side with him in our office. And it's like, you know, yes, he has skills in being able to visually see how things will look three-dimensional based on two-dimensional drawings, but he also has to communicate that, and he has to communicate that with people who don't have that ability, right? And so there's all these other places where those skills need to come in. That's all.
I agree 100% with what you just said right there. That was great, a great point.
Can I
Let's
add
go on.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Carla,
go
I
ahead.
just going to add, you know, for those of us that have taken the assessment, it gives you some results of what skills that you have and what we would call professional skills or socio-emotional learning. And so those, it talks about how you can use in group situations. It talks about how I think what we could do is do a really good job about helping students connect those skills that they have strengths in to maybe where other content areas they're building those strengths up, or able to work on ones that maybe they haven't scored as high in. So I think there's just some opportunities, like you're saying, Amy, to kind of like expand beyond just kind of that focus on careers. Although that is a benefit of taking this, is that they get to learn of what career it could look like. But I think that there's opportunities to expand beyond that. Thank you for mentioning that. That's it for me.
Okay, we need to wrap this little section part up because we are squeezing into Brooke's time here, and I'm sorry, Brooke. Knowing how you felt before and after the assessment, and what do you think is important for your students to know in preparation for the assessment? So anybody, throw it in the chat, holler it out. What do we need to do ahead of time and in preparation based on what you know that YouScience has already provided and throughout this discussion so far?
Just the students having patience with themselves and realizing it may not be as quick as they would like it, especially for kids today. I feel like an old person saying, but kids today really don't have the patience to sit with something if it doesn't make sense right away. So just patience and persistence.
Anybody else?
Well, I think, and I wrote this in the chat earlier, that just because whatever the test, it's not a test, it's a skills inventory. It doesn't assign them their career in the 8th grade.
True.
This is to give them options. This is to look at, hey, I didn't know, maybe I want to be a pig farmer for youth. You know, I didn't know that. I didn't know I had an interest in animals. I didn't know I had or an aptitude. Okay, let's explore. You know, maybe you're still going to go to college and be a lawyer and whatever. That's why we, but let's explore the options out there. I mean, I go back to the needle sort too, back in the day. And you try to gain the answer. Well, I want to be this. And so you try to, this is just show the aptitude. Take the test, have patience with yourself, because it's not, it gets a little tedious after a while.
Anybody else? And then we'll move on. Okay, I think just to wrap that up, I think it's a great reminder that not every area is going to feel good or feel easy to do. I had some of our educators in Southern Oregon were, some of them made decisions that they did not want to be a part of the pilot because their own experience taking the test was, oh, this part was hard. I had to ask my husband for help. I don't want my students to feel like it's hard. And I think they've missed the point there. And so, yes, communicating to your students that this is just showing them how their brain works. Some parts might be hard, some might be easy. They're not right or wrong. All right, let's move on. Brooke, take it away.
Thanks, Carla. Just to introduce myself, if you didn't hear before, my name is Brooke Rich, and I'm the Director of CTE and STEM at the High Desert ESD. there's some questions that I want you to read through here on the screen. And to give you a bit of background, the region that I serve is one of the largest CTE regions in the state. I serve from the Washington to California border, about 27,500 square miles in there. And I cover everything from K-12 schools that have less than 100 students in their district to, you know, the 5th or 6th largest school district in the state with Ben Lapine. So we're pretty diverse when it comes to the students we serve. We also have obviously a huge economically diverse group of students and a variety of diversity factors, you know, amongst racial and language diversity as well. So on the screen here, we're going to talk about interest versus aptitude versus a combination of the two. And I appreciate it. I think it was, I don't remember who it was now. Somebody was talking about the roots and finding those transferable skills, and wanted to share that within our region, we are using Career Tree as part of our career exploration and guidance for students. And if you're not familiar with that, I would suggest or encourage you to look up Mark Perna's work. And the reason I bring that up is because it does allow us to combine interest and aptitude into something that helps a student explore what they might be good at, as well as what they may be passionate about. Because I think one of the things that we're working with and finding with our students that are in school today, which varies from those of us who've been out of high school 30 or more years, is that if a student is not passionate about something, they will not pursue it. So I think there was a comment earlier around, so we identify a student's aptitude as this particular program of study or career cluster. It's not available at the high school. Doesn't really matter. The student may not understand or be interested in that. Similarly to Carla talking about agriculture, I have to do a little plug here. I taught high school agriculture for a really long time. There's so much more to ag than being a pig farmer, although we now raise pigs. And that was something I was never interested in as a kid. But anyway, as we think about this, how do each of you define interest versus aptitude? How do we use those assessments with our students? And then what can those conversations look like? So I'm just going to open it up. I'm a talker, so please feel free to chime in and answer maybe that first or maybe the first two questions on the screen.
I think that one of the pieces as far as how it can look is just that being able to get kind of in the groove of it, and students knowing at particular grade levels they're going to be looking at certain parts. And so I think in the bigger picture sense, just helping to kind of establish some norms for it within a school is huge in getting them to really take it seriously, that they know that when they get to 7th grade they're going to be starting to think about it, and that takes a lot of time, but in the long term I think that could potentially be very helpful for students.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think, you know, we hear from parents, well, my students shouldn't be required to pick their career pathway in middle school or high school. You know, they're still exploring, they're still learning. And we know from our data, specifically at the high school and post-secondary level, that students don't necessarily continue on with a program of study after graduation, right? They may be engaged in a program of study at the high school level because they've got a great connection with the instructor in that area. It's something they enjoy doing. It's not that they don't see themselves in that industry, but there's actually something that might be related through those transferable skills that they would rather do instead. And so I think just providing those opportunities is greatly important. Other thoughts?
Nobody else. I just had a thought too with, you know, what I love about this, it pushes the career exploration and conversation down to middle school. When I moved to this country, and it took me years to understand, but it seemed to me people go to community college. That's the first time you have these conversations as a transition out of high school into college. And then they say, oh, they can experience themselves in college. It's like, what happened the first K through 12 years? Didn't have 12 years time or 13 years time to have these experiences. Now they have to get into college when they're 17. So I love that this conversation is being pushed down more and be more intentional. Yes, you will need the mathematics in any career. You need the English skills in any career. So that's what I just.
Thank you, Regina. I'm going to take a look at the third and fourth bullet point on the screen now. So what kind of intentional connections are you making or could you make with your secondary partner schools? And what connections have you made or could you make with your business and industry partners? As my team was kind of brainstorming around how we wanted to present this portion in today's presentation, we talked about some of the kind of glowing examples that we have in our region and maybe some areas that have some opportunity for growth. And I mentioned the size of my region and all the various populations that we have in there. But one of the examples we wanted to share was Crook County School District. If you're not familiar with Prineville or Crook County, it's unique in that they really like to be their own thing and do their own things. They want to have a different identifier than Bend, you know, the larger, more urban area in Central Oregon. And their superintendent is really pushing their district to stand apart from other districts intentionally around career and technical education. And when she came on board, I want to say 2.5 years ago, she said, we're going to build additional programs. We're going to be the premier school in Oregon. We're going to provide as many opportunities as we can. And I have to say that she has gone above and beyond. I'm not one to brag on administrators a lot because I think we all work really hard in a lot of different situations. And even the smallest steps are worth, you know, a ton of merit. But in this particular case, really looked at what did her community need? How could her secondary and even middle school better serve the community in which they're located? And I love that kind of tie to what do our employers need. Again, they want to be known for providing students that can go to work directly into you know, their local economy or even do some post-secondary training and return to the community because they believe in those strong family values and just kind of see a different view of their school district than other areas in Central Oregon. What they have done is improved the existing career and technical education programs, as well as adding additional programs that were lacking in their high school. In addition, they wanted to provide some opportunity at the middle school level, because if you were to grab 10 high school CTE teachers and say, what's the biggest concern that you have when students start as freshmen? It's that they don't know anything about CTE. They don't know anything about what they want to do. They've never done any career exploration. And so through some general fund dollars, as well as some grant funds from Facebook, Crook County School District purchased a college and career ready lab for their middle school that every single one of their 7th and 8th graders experience prior to high school. It's a Paxton Patterson lab. This is not a sales presentation for Paxton for sure, but just as a basis for what they're using. And each of the learning modules that they have in that middle school is tied in some way to a secondary CTE program of study. So students get a little bit of just a taste, right? A sample of what it could look like as they move into the secondary school there and what those experiences could look like. Partnering that with Career Tree and helping students determine or define their passion and what they're most interested in. And then I think, and I've told Jim this, like the YouScience is the sprinkles on top of that magical formula that it really allows students to see what their aptitude is and hopefully find a cross section between that interest and aptitude to really find maybe that point where students are going to say, I know this is what I want to do, broad picture, and this is where I'm going to move. So I just wonder, you know, about the rest of you, what have those connections looked like, or have you had those conversations? Again, bringing in business and industry can be a really hard thing for administrators or teachers to do, right? Like we might have that one partner industry that we want to bring in, or that one person that is a good friend of ours outside of school, and we bring them in to talk about what financial planning looks like, or what, you know, whatever small business it is that they work in or own. But on a broader base, what do those, or what could those industry connections and business partnerships look like for each of you? And this can be brainstorm, this can be within your own thought, or you can throw it in the chat or say it verbally as well. Oh my goodness, you guys are killing me this morning.
I'll go ahead. Our district, again, I'm in Jervis, and we're in with the ESD, with Willamette ESD, we are in the process of building a regional CTE center for the rural districts in the Salem area, because Salem Kaiser built their CTE center and then all this. Well, we're coming online next fall with it. And that's actually one of the reasons put our name in the hat to be in this pilot, because I want our 7th and 8th graders to start thinking about, okay, when you get to high school, you're gonna have the opportunity to go to this CTE center. And so, and our high school has a pretty vigorous CTE program for 300 student high school. We've got construction, we've got ag, we've got health occupations. So we want to have our 7th and 8th graders to think about. And this is what, in a couple of years, these are going to be the choices you're going to have. Going back to a discussion we had earlier about getting math and science credits, I know that when the students go to the cosmetology program at our CTE center, they're going to be able to get both math and science for the things that they have to, the formulations they have to figure out for hair color and those kind of things. There's credits that are going to be involved in that. But we're doing it right now with our regional CTE center, and very exciting. And I think actually the gentleman that's helping us with this, his goal is to have regional CTE centers all over the state. Even the small schools can have the access that bigger schools get because they have more money and more industry right around them. So, but it is, this is the reason I'm here, is to get our 7th and 8th graders to think about more than being a YouTube sensation when they grow up. Because I've had students actually tell me, "Oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber." Okay, you and 5 million other people. So that's good.
I appreciate you bringing up the equitable access to CTE programs, because that is another thing that we talked about. So, again, I mentioned the region that I'm in, and I'm sorry that we're pushing up against the 11 o'clock hour. I'll wrap this up fairly quickly, but I have schools like Mitchell, Fossil, Spray, Condon, Sherman County. If you haven't been to those, they're less than a one-horse town, and we can't or haven't figured out how to provide equitable access to CTE programs for those students. So I was just in conversation with an assistant superintendent the other day about, hey, I've got this kid that's interested in construction. He goes to school in Mitchell. The only program there is an ag program. How do I get him involved? What are some online certifications that he can earn? And all the while I'm thinking, this is awesome that you have an adult advocating for this student, and an online OSHA 10 certification gives about this much window to what the construction industry is actually like, and what could it look like if we could provide different avenues to connect that student to a CTE program of study. And before we get into the discussion, because I don't want to sideline us on what an online CTE program could look like, it's vastly different than a hands-on experience. So I'm not trying to demystify or debunk any of that, but I think we need to think about giving those students true hands-on experience. And again, when we think about equity, providing online is not equitable access compared to those students who live in a community where there's actually a CTE program of study available to them. I think one of the other things we talked about is, what do counselors or non-CTE teachers know, and how are they messaging opportunities to parents and students? So, we know from research that a lot of our students make career decisions based on what counselors and parents and family members tell them. What are your counselors, family members, core academic teachers sharing with students? What are their beliefs about what CTE could look like, or what opportunities could look like? What are their beliefs around, I think it's great to provide an avenue of a college-going culture for students who haven't experienced that. But is their message that a four-year degree is for everyone? Or are they saying there's lots of avenues to post-secondary training or education? Not everybody is equipped or ready or needing to attain a four-year degree in order to be successful. So just one other thing I wanted to share with you. And again, I just appreciate the opportunity to share with you today. For sure, none of us on this call that are coordinators are doing everything the best way we can, right? We're still looking at different opportunities to connect with students and teachers and administrators and family members. But I think just kind of thinking about, is it aptitude? Is it, sorry, clicking around on my screen here. Is it interest? Is it passion? Or what is the intersection of all of those? And I think, Jim, we can skip the next slide.
Okay. Huge thank you, Brooke, Carla, Regina. I feel like this conversation can go on for hours and hours and days. It's just absolutely wonderful. And I think this is what really is the motivating factor for all of us, is that grand equitable opportunity for all of our students. So a huge heartfelt thank you to all three of you. And to everyone, just as made note in the chat, I'm just really briefly going to go over a couple of things. And leave as you need to. It's been just such a joy to have you with us this morning. So I will kind of make this a goodbye if you have to head out. Thank you for joining us. Please know you can email Beth or myself at any time. Our contact information, I'm going to ask Beth to put that into the chat for you. You can find us on the ODE website in CTE and comprehensive counseling. Your project coordinators have our access info. There will be a rich resource library available to you both at Oregon Open Learning and in a Google folder system that we're setting up with your coordinators. And so look for that anywhere. She's going to put our information in. We're just really grateful. What I'm going to do right now is just touch upon a couple of elements because questions have come up today, and then also just to make you aware of the work that's taking place in this early part of the startup. And I'm going to focus on the Oregon Open Learning right now really quick. How many folks, if you could wave at me, have been on the Oregon Open Learning site or know about Oregon Open Learning? So I got a couple head nods, some thumbs up. Okay, what I'm going to do, this will be the super fast F35 version. If you go to Oregon Hub, the chat's been placed in by Beth, and open that up, there'll be a sign in register up in the upper right corner. It's a very fast access. If you want to do that now, great. If you don't, let me just show you where we're going to put our work in terms of housing it for our work. And also as this expands statewide, everyone has access to this. Students, parents, educators, administrators. It is an open educational resources forum. If you're on this page, we can scroll down and we are going to be housed in the groups section on the education partners and practices side. And then as we move down there, we've got our own Oregon Middle School Career Exploration group. If anybody has a great photo idea or an icon idea, send it to me because we're still building this out. As you open that up, then we will build a folder system. This is just temporary. We will build a folder system that feeds all of our efforts. There's a lesson plan template that's already in place. So as you have eager folks and they want to start developing locally focused lesson plans around intro work during the assessment, how to support kids as they're going through it. We will post the existing resources that YouScience provides and some lesson plans that are being developed among the project coordinators and from ODE subject specialists. But we've provided a template that will allow an educator to do a couple of things: build their own lesson. They can just simply move through and add the information as it comes up, choose their grade levels, choose their suggested times, and choose their licensing type, which is essential in this open educational forum. We will provide webinar links, we will provide resources for folks and other trainings along this line, but this is just a quick glimpse. I don't know, need guidance? Good answer, anytime. Author of the lesson, so maybe a counselor says, I watched an educator in a classroom with kids around this subject area, and I want to promote the lesson they did. Can recognize that educator as the author, but they could be the person to submit it into the forum. What the objectives were, and just moving through, we have standard opportunities, how to put your links in for media links, educator materials, etc., whether it's PDFs or links to website content, and then before the lesson, during the lesson, after the lesson section. And if they have a lesson already designed that's been used for other purposes already, just simply cut and paste in a link or just drop all the content in there. For the first part of this 18-month pilot, for these first 6 to 8 months, Beth and I will do the uploads for the Oregon Open Learning. So we're going to help with that lift, and folks will have an opportunity to submit lesson plans into the group, into the network, and we will help populate this. You will see quite a bit of content being loaded in the next week. So by next Thursday, Beth and I are making a commitment to you that you'll have some pre-lesson opportunities in here and available. Can I answer any questions around that really quick before going back? Okay. If we had more time, I'd say let's all get signed up and I'll get my bonus points with the Oregon Open Learning team. But if you have a chance, do that. You can send this along to folks at your school if you want to connect them And this, I believe, is going to be a really rich resource across the state over time. There's a huge investment of time and material and talent going into the OER Commons, Oregon Open Learning Platform, that we hope you will see really change equitable access to materials and content for students and parents and educators across the state. So look forward to seeing you on the Oregon Open Learning Hub. Again, we'll do additional trainings as time goes by. What am I missing, Beth? I feel like I'm missing one
I know.
thing. Yes, Carla.
I don't remember if we said this already, but just to give you all who are here a heads up, we did our first training like today, earlier this week, and we had Amy Bradley from YouScience do her great presentation, which she did, but we also had her partner in crime do a really whirlwind of a explanation of all the nuts and bolts and how to operate the back end admin side of YouScience. And we were all like spinning and swimming and couldn't keep up. And we said, whoa, 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 whoa. For the next couple of sessions for this introductory, let's hold off on that and let's provide an additional session, make it available for anybody who wants to come alongside you with YouScience, and you can show us that how to get just up to speed on what to do on the back end. So there's going to be an upcoming session where you'll be invited to if you'd like to have some in-depth how to utilize the back end of YouScience. I know that was kind of off track of what you're talking about, but I didn't want to.
No, that's absolutely perfect. Thank you very much. And Brian, yes, registration. So there just needs to be a little filter process. And once you've signed up for the group, we will get you access. If you don't have access by Monday morning, please let me know and I'll see if there's a glitch in the system. Thank you, Carla, for that. Yes, so trainings with OOL, trainings with YouScience on how to get that admin work set up. And then finally, this will be some, there'll be a follow-up email, probably out to you Tuesday, no later than Wednesday next week. That's going to include the YouScience readiness form. So your school ambassadors, if you want to get moving ahead more quickly, work with your coordinators, your project coordinators, and your team ambassadors, get that readiness form in, watch the video, do a training either on the video format or with YouScience or with us in a large group format. And then start moving your kids into the process. We'll have the results walkthrough activities listed there. Lesson plan template will be available. Links again to the Oregon Open Learning Hub, and also links to research and validity documents around YouScience. So if you have folks that need to have that conversation still, those will be available. Today's PowerPoint. And then Beth and I are going to open up office hours on a weekly basis for the rest of this school year and into the summertime. So we will have a weekly time frame where you can just drop in at any time and ask questions specifically around this pilot project. That is good for anybody at any level. So from the coach, counselor, educator, administrator at your local school level, all the way through project coordinators will be available to you on those consistent office hours to answer questions for you on a weekly basis. We will have additionally the Career Connected Learning listserv, which will be a feeder of things that are happening with this work, with awareness, exploration, preparation, and training on the whole Career Connected continuum as Oregon builds out that process. Links to the Equity Lens, Equity Stance, Lauren's story, and answering a bunch of questions from today and the other two kickoff gatherings we have. Big list, really rapid, lots of information to come. But that pretty much wraps up what we wanted to cover today. Want to extend again a tremendous thank you to our partners, our project coordinators, for those that contributed today. And I'm going to say goodbye and pass it to Beth for a final goodbye, and then we'll leave it open for one more chance for folks to speak aloud. Beth?
Just another appreciation for everyone that's here today. Thank you to all our regional coordinators for presenting information, and also to participants that have been on the call and participating in the discussions. It's just been wonderful to hear from all of you. So thank you so much for being here today on a Saturday. Thank you.
Yes. So we'll stay on for a few minutes if anybody has additional questions, and a huge giant thank you. I'm going to turn the recording off now.